Major, I wanted to lead off with the offensive line. Coming in, SMU was leading the nation in sacks to keep your quarterback upright, and then also open some really good holes in the running game. What did you see from the previous couple of weeks to now, and the kind of the turnaround that they had Saturday?
Execution. There's so many things that go into the run game. And offensive line, obviously, first and foremost, always deserves credit, and we both of our lines of play, defensive line and offensive line, we promote those within our program. But they did a great job of executing and doing what they're asked to do, creating movement in situations. But, a lot of it is getting into the right looks to run the football, backs breaking tackles. On the 50-yard run that Duke had there when we were backed up on our 5-yard line, you see Steve Dunbar come flying in there and wiping the safety out. And then now Duke's free on the corner. So there's a lot of people involved in the run game, and not taking anything away from the offensive line unit, because they did an outstanding job. But there's a lot of people that have to do some great things to be able to run the football, and we just need to understand that as an offense and understand why we ran the ball well, and how do we keep doing that in practice and put an emphasis on that as coaches, and not being satisfied, just continue to move and improve throughout the season on that.
Major, could you you're at the halfway mark of the season. Give us like a quick thumbnail, health of your ball club, physically, mentally, and you and your tenure, how are you looking for? Just a quick thumbnail as to what do you think you are. Are you there? Are you on point in your mind and the target points for this team?
Yeah, right now at the halfway point, we talked about it yesterday. It's one at a time, one game at a time. All right, so how do we focus on one game, one practice at a time, one period at a time, one rep at a time? Let's have our mindset that way as a football team. What do we have to do throughout the week in our process of getting ready, to give ourselves the best chance to win? So, let's not get too retrospective halfway into the season. Let's just understand what we've done the last couple of weeks that have allowed us to win. We also talked about, hey, it's the midway point of the season. We're not going to get an off week until another 4 weeks from now. There's going to be bumps, there's going to be bruises, there's going to be soreness. That's part of the game. And so, guys who are banged up a little bit, have some bumps and bruises, suck it up and let's go. Guys that are, injured, other players step up. So this is that point in the season. So we had that conversation yesterday, and while there's been some good things the last 2 weeks, let's not lose sight of our failures 3 weeks ago. Let's that can start to get washed away after a couple wins. Let's understand ball security, taking the football away, scoring touchdowns in the red zone, making people kick field goals or taking the ball away in the red zone is what has won the last 2 weeks. And let's understand that feeling from 3 weeks ago and not ever lose sight of that as a football team. And so I feel very confident that our team is growing and maturing from that standpoint. We have to stay on it every day as coaches and make sure their mind's in the right place.
Hey, Coach. Grant Stewart, number 30, true freshman, being on the special teams unit, can you talk a little bit about how he's earned that role in his growth and development as a player?
Yeah. Number one, effort. Plays with great effort, practices with great effort. Number two, physical. So you give great effort and you play hard and you're a physical football player, you're going to have a place on our football team, and has tremendous pride, as an athlete, very competitive, no matter what you ask him to do, whether it's playing defense, whether it's being on punt team, kickoff return team, kickoff coverage, punt return, just tremendous pride in his assignment, and he's just learning and growing and developing as a player, and just needs to have that same process week in and week out, and just watch himself continue to grow.
Major, the defensive players that we spoke to after the game called it when they get into that red zone and they're close to the end zone, flipping the switch. Some of them said you can't do anything but fight when you're backed up against the wall. Is there another gear that they get into when they get into those situations? Because it seems like, especially the last few weeks, they've been up against the wall a few times and come out of it pretty well.
Yeah, that's the mentality you have to have. In the good red zone defenses that I've been able to be around as an assistant, whether it's been different schools or here the last couple of years, it's been that mentality that no matter where the ball gets, how it gets there, whether it's a kickoff return, an offensive turnover, a punt return, flip the switch, go put out the fire, and they've done a great job with that. And in today's football, there's just so much spread, so many explosive plays that you end up in that situation. So a lot of it has come down to how you play red zone defense. You know, not that you say, hey, it's okay if they get down there. That's not it by any stretch of the imagination. But there is a little bit of conceding the thought that, hey, people are going to move the ball at times and they're going to get in the red zone. It's what they come away with, whether it's 3 or none, that's the most important thing. And then it's our offense's job, if they come away with none and we take the ball away, hey, get 2 first downs and let's flop field position or go score.
Coach, looking back at the SMU film after the game, were you able to put your finger on anything that had you guys see more success in certain areas of the offense? Obviously, running was one of them. You guys, it seemed like you got downfield more. There's just some differences in the offense this week. Was there anything you were able to attribute that to this week after going back and look at the film?
I think more guys have become more comfortable in the roles. You know, it helped, you know, with Dylan being out, you know, Duke got more of a flow. You know, it's like hitting a baseball. The more at bats you get, the more you see those pitches, the better you can anticipate them. And so as the game went on, like a lot of backs, he starts to see it and see it better and better and better. I think that helped. But the main thing was just the tempo. You know, we played faster, the plays came in faster, the players lined up faster, and they play better that way. And we've got to just continue to improve on that and keep that same tempo throughout practice and get better.
And then the early success obviously probably plays into it a little bit as well, with the defense having to try to make some changes, opens other things up.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Also on the defensive line this week, some of these guys also stepping up, continued to step up, with Ed Oliver being maybe not quite 100%. Anything you could attribute to as far as Peyton Turner continuing? I mean, we talked about him after his first big game, but he's continued to get in there and make some big plays. Anything you can add on him, what he's been able to do, developmental-wise?
Yeah, you know, and not to just focus in on one player, but there were some great things that the defensive line did. There's some times that we're out of position, whether it's from, you know, not getting the call, not executing the call, inexperience, but there was a couple times in there where we're not fitting the right gap and a ball spits out of there for 20, 30 yards. So we've got to eliminate those so we don't have to play great red zone defense. We can eliminate those and keep that ball out of that portion of the field.
Major, the fourth quarter for Terrell Williams, not only the 2 picks, but he breaks down a key 4th down pass. How you've used him and how he's kind of developed, can you kind of just address the progression of him and what those plays, you know, meant in the 4th quarter of that game?
Huge, you know, huge. As you mentioned, 4th down stop, 2 interceptions in the red zone. Athletic, smart, great effort. You know, there's always things that we can improve on in our game. And he'll be the first to tell you that there's things that he can improve on in his game. But in terms of just seeing it, playing with his eyes, understanding down and distance situations, understanding personnel, sets, you know, he dives all into that. You can tell when you're in a team meeting and you can see someone's eyes. You can tell how intently they're listening to you. And if he's listening the same way in his position meetings and in defensive meetings, then I know he's dialed into what's going on. You know, the lights are very bright.
Ed, I don't know if it was a joke, but Ed posted on Twitter after the game that 75%, he thought he gave himself a pretty good rating, even with the brace on. But I went back and looked. There was a screen pass that they threw to Sutton, and there's Ed downfield making the tackle from behind. I mean, just that motor, we've seen it, but does that ever not surprise you when the guy's coming off of an injury and he's still out there making those kind of plays?
It does and it doesn't. You know, it does surprise you because that's just not human nature for people to give it up like that. So there are some times where I'm like, wow, you know, this guy's tough and gives great effort, and he's not 100% and he's still doing it. And at the same time, I know how much he loves to play, and I know how he loves to win, and he wants his defense to be great. And so he goes out there and does it for the other 10 guys in the huddle. So there's times where you are surprised, and there's times where you're not surprised. You're like, that's just, you know, why are you surprised? He does that all the time, Major. So, you know.
Well, you touched on a little bit after the game with what Ed brings to the team juice-wise. Before the game, he was out there just shortly before kickoff. He was jumping around. You could tell he felt good and he was into it. And you could tell the team was kind of, you know, some of the other players fed off of that. Does he really bring just his presence kind of on the team a little bit? I know you don't want, again, the team to depend just on this guy, but does him being in there and being around the team really make a difference sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, your best players, I mean, let's say it what it is, your best players are going to create a lot of the atmosphere, the attitude, the mentality of your team. You know, I thought Greg did the same thing for our offense. You know, didn't say a whole bunch, but just how competitive he was, how excited he was to go play and practice. brought everybody's level of intensity up. So yeah, I think that Ed, and there's a lot of others on the team as well that, Terrell's, you mentioned earlier, guys that get excited to play, it's contagious. I mean, you can't hide it.
Major, from what you can say from Saturday night, guys like Burden, it didn't seem like it was more of a precaution, and Bonner was more headaches than a true concussion, even though he's in the protocol. Does that make it a little bit, I want to call it positive for you that they could possibly go this week just because of the nature, or is this still going to be a real
Talking about
Bonner and Dillon?
Yeah, much closer to playing this week than they were. Obviously Bonner, we didn't know that until Friday morning, but because he's been through part of the protocol, and you never know how concussions work. So right now he's heading in the right direction. So hopefully he'll be available Saturday. Dillon, was cleared, but just didn't quite feel right. And then he did feel right, but it was too late. We were in the flow of the game. And so we just felt like it was best to sit him out. So both of those guys should be closer to playing this week.
This is a team that's surprisingly struggled a little bit, but they're coming off of 3 games against option-based teams, giving up a lot of rushing yards. Is that, in terms of obviously what you don't do, but I mean, does that give y'all something to work on in terms of how they've played run defense, or is that kind of, you have to throw those things out the window because of the nature of those offenses?
Yeah, coaches know New Mexico and Navy is harder tape to watch. Tulane did some more things that are similar, and there's some similarities, but that's a hard offense to get ready for. What Navy does, what New Mexico does, is very difficult. To get ready for those type of teams.